Emovis Ireland is a leading provider of mobility-based solutions. They make the complicated easy because they believe in the freedom of going places. And today we're going to meet Dr. Bidisha Ghosh, who's the chair of the Irish Transport Research Network and is also an assistant professor at the School of Engineering at Trinity College. So based on your research in Ireland and indeed other countries, how would you rate Irish transport facilities and infrastructure?
I would say Ireland is somewhere in the middle. So there are many other European countries which we probably all know the names of. Let's say Germany or Switzerland or Sweden would have a much better transport system, whereas in Ireland it's relatively okay with some public transport provided. And the main problem with the country in terms of its transport infrastructure is that there is a huge urban-rural divide. So as a city, Dublin has relatively good transport facilities with good public transport, train, tram, buses, good roads, we have a good motorway network, but when we go to rural Ireland we see a much more different picture, and we tend to see that there is less accessibility, and there are people who, if they cannot drive, they live in areas where there's no mobility at all.
And is that particular to Ireland, or are most countries like that in terms of a rural-urban divide in transport links?
In Europe, I would say there are many other countries, the names that I mentioned, would have good accessibility for low-density areas as well. And this more or less comes from the concept that transport is a need, like a healthcare need, and like it is a sector where the government needs to invest and subsidize and spend money on, because transport supports economy and society and environment. So rather than thinking of transport as a profit-making sector, if we start thinking of it as a sector where when you put money that actually helps other sectors, then only that way we can progress. And that's how the other countries where there is good transport network in rural areas, in low-density areas, operate.
So do we need more investment in rural areas? Is there too much in urban areas, that if there's a certain pot of cash or certain funds allocated, there needs to be a better balance between urban and rural?
Overall, there needs to be more investment in all areas, urban and rural both. In rural, the needs are more, in rural areas the needs are different. We need more infrastructure, we need more public transport and accessibility. In urban areas we need the system to work efficiently. So we need more modeling, more understanding of how people behave, what do they want from their commute, where do they live and where do they work. And based on that, design it in a manner that we can make it work more efficiently. So the needs are different. However, both urban and rural needs investment.
Tell me about some of your research and maybe some of the highlights of the findings you found that are areas we really need to look at and that aren't looking at enough.
In terms of our research, I worked significantly in cycling. I worked significantly in transport and emission. What we found in terms of cycling is that Dublin has a fantastic cycling culture. People are really interested and they're taking up cycling. However, we still do not understand very well the risk to cyclists, like when they are in shared bus and cycle lanes, and when they are cycling through really very congested roads where there is a lot of air pollution. There's one quick thing to mention here is that when you are doing an exercise like walking or cycling, your heart rate increases. That means we tend to inhale more air. And then if somebody is walking and cycling in a busy traffic road, what happens is that they're inhaling more polluted air than somebody sitting in a car or sitting at home. And that means that we need to take care of the infrastructure we provide to cyclists, and maybe even tell them how they can go from their origin to their destination using more safer roads where there is less air pollution, and roads which are more comfortable for a cyclist. There is more appropriate infrastructure for them to cycle on. So these things are something that we found out from our cycling research, from our research on public transport alternative fuels. We found out that the targets we have for which comes down from EU in relation to our greenhouse gas emission, our nitrogen oxide emissions, we are going to find it very difficult to meet these targets. And
Okay, how far off them are we? Or how unlikely is it that we're going to meet them?
very unlikely.
Okay.
The number of electric cars we need is unreal to cut basically to cut the pollution down. But that's also a challenge, because we cannot really just buy electric cars. We don't know how they're being, recycled, how the batteries are being recycled. And there was a recent article published in Nature where there was a lot of discussion on the lithium-ion batteries and how basically the life cycle of electric cars are not known to us very well. And this is not a problem of Ireland only. All over the world, there's more and more research is being done that how electric car, if it becomes mainstream, how can we actually utilize it? Just like we know the conventional vehicles, how we manufacture them, how we, how it ends up in a scrapyard, what happens to the body of it, what happens to the engine. The same things we need to know about electric cars before they become mainstream. Now, in terms of the pollution targets, our targets for carbon emission, our targets for nitrogen oxide emissions, there are different ways of targeting it, and it should be a multi-pronged approach. We shouldn't only think that removing conventional vehicles or swapping conventional vehicles with electric vehicles will give us the solution. We need to have more public transport, but where are we putting these buses in is important to know, and how can we target the areas which are more deprived and provide them with better public transport or more accessible transport options where they can make better choices is important to learn.
And on the electric cars and hybrid cars, is it a good thing that people are being incentivized, and perhaps if there's a grant available, to change your car from a diesel or a petrol car to a hybrid or fully electric car?
It's a good thing, yeah, but I think when we look at the research, it's important, as I was talking about the whole life cycle, we must think about electric cars. They do not only operate on the roads, like in terms of being on the road, they pollute less. And that is something we call tank-to-wheel emission.
Okay.
Whereas when we talk about well-to-wheel emission, that means from manufacturing to the final product of being on road and how electricity is being generated, the electric cars have a good enough carbon footprint. There is a significant carbon emission coming from these electric cars as well. And how do we generate electricity is also a very important thing we need to think about. Are we generating it from renewable energy or is it from fossil fuel? And if we're generating it from fossil fuel, we're just shifting the pollution, really not getting rid of it.
There's so much joined up thinking needed, isn't there?
Yes, and that's the biggest challenge for Ireland, is that we need to have joined up thinking in the sense that electric car is only a part of the solution. We need to think about what people need and how are they going to change their behavior. If we are incentivizing electric cars, would they straight away go and buy more expensive cars when there are only 8 or 10 models available? So we need to also do a lot more behavioral research to find out that how they are going to change their behavior. Number one. Number two is we also need to do a lot more research on the actual network we have, where there is a need of bus lane, where there is a need of more road space and aspects such as that, and how this can happen is when everybody joins force, like the government offices like DITAS, which is our Department of Transport, and then there is TII, Transport Infrastructure Ireland, Road Safety Authority, Dublin City Council, the big universities. So I chair an organization called Irish Transport Research Network. This organization is an organization of all the university professors and researchers who work in transportation. So people like us who is working with one foot in Ireland and one foot abroad, where we are, working with a lot of European colleagues, American colleagues, and people from all over the world, and learning from their own countries and their experiences. When we all come together and then try to maybe house all the data that we have in Ireland, all the models we have in Ireland, look at the problem, look at our targets, and based on that decide on the problems that we have, and then how do we solve it. Only then we can actually reach a solution which will be sustainable and which will actually improve or will see some significant change in the country.
And collectively, what progress has been made in that regard with the government, with the various different stakeholders? I guess the idea of, in my mind, it's like getting the United Nations all around the table. Everyone says their piece and everyone tries to figure this out together.
Not much. I'm really sad to say that there is nothing much that has happened, and this is, personally speaking, this is one of my crusades that I want to.
Okay.
I don't know. This is probably not a politically correct term to use, but what I mean to say, this is my mission to have a body like Environmental Protection Agency,
Okay.
what it does for the environment, in the same manner have a body for transportation research where we house all the expertise, transport experts. We house all the expertise that is on transportation through models and data, and psychologists, policymakers. Everybody can come together, sit around a round table, ask each other questions, look for solutions, and come up with solutions in a joined up manner. And I think that is absolutely necessary. And for a small country such as Ireland, I think if we have a body like this, and with the intention and with our current economy, the economic boom we have, there is money to invest, I think we will definitely see a difference, and then others can learn from us.
Okay, so there's not much room for excuses from anybody.
No.
And would I be right in thinking that you're not the only one who has this will and this wish? So how do you make it happen?
I think, like talking to you is one of the channels. I think awareness, that people need to know that this is what we are lacking. That's the first thing I think that we need to let everybody know. And the more there is this concept echoing all around the country and the policymakers and the government sectors, I think we should be able to see changes coming down the line. I'm very hopeful that changes will come down the line. There is somehow in the last 1 or 2 years, I think, as the economy is doing really well, and compared to that, as the transport sector is not doing well at all. Like, transport is still the largest carbon emitting sector of the country. We spend 45% more time than we should in our cars or in our commute.
Really, that high?
Yes,
45%?
Dublin City is the 14th most congested city in the world. Where we have the population of, I think population-wise, we are 124th in the world.
So it's completely disproportionate?
Completely disproportionate.
Wow.
And why is this happening is we need to think about it. Do you know how much money we waste in congestion? At this moment, 350 million euros per annum.
Can you explain that? How is it wasted?
So what happens is that when you are sitting in traffic, okay, somebody is paying for it. We do not see this is an invisible payment, which is affecting the economy. So let's say we want to build a new transport infrastructure. How do we do the cost benefit analysis for that? The way we analyze it, we put a value to our time that we are spending in our commute, and there is a value like approximately 30 euros per hour for anybody working when they spend time in their commute during their work time. Okay, so then you can add costs like the maintenance of a car, the buying cost of a car, depreciation. If you're traveling in public transport, the fare of public transport. On top of that, we can add costs such as the pollution cost, the cost of accidents that will happen. Anyway, we can predict based on like every 1,000 cars that are on the road, how many accidents we can expect. So all these costs, when added up together, gives us a cost for a transport infrastructure. And based on that, we find out if it's worth building that infrastructure or not. In the same manner, when we are looking at congestion, the extra time we are spending in our cars can be valued, and the extra pollution that is happening, because the more you accelerate and decelerate, especially stop and go traffic and congestion, we pollute more. So the cost of pollution, the cost of diseases caused by the pollution, the cost of agricultural, like there is a effect on the agriculture, the farming based on these are called secondary effects of pollution. So all these can be converted to money, and then when we add all of that up, we can easily say the amount that is costing the country. Somebody is paying for it from their pocket. Basically, the taxpayers are paying for it, but this is not something that we see every day. When you're spending half an hour extra in your car, you are not working for half an hour. So those productive half an hour is lost, and that is a loss to the economy.
Yeah,
and in this manner, by 2030, we'll be losing 2 billion euros every year to congestion. The other thing I forgot to mention is that accidents have similar costs as congestion. All over the world, whenever we consider the cost of congestion, we also check when the cost of accidents cause congestion and loss of life. When we add monetary value to that, so accident has a similar cost. So you can imagine what is the cost of the transport sector working dysfunctionally in a country.
Wow, that is incredible. Do you think it would help if there was public awareness of this? Because
I think so.
Safe to say I'm not the only civilian who's never heard of this before, because that is astonishing and shocking, and maybe that might help, and there'll be a groundswell from people who go, hang on a minute, we're very aware now about the environment in terms of plastic and single use, and people have really taken to that once they knew just how devastating. It took us a while to catch on to it, but we're getting there.
Yes.
That similarly people go, hang on, this isn't good enough, and I can actually help play my part in it.
I think everybody in a country like Ireland, people are really environmentally friendly, and that's what we see through the cycling revolution that we saw. I mean, I like to use the word revolution in this case because the modal shift is enormous. A lot more people, almost like double the number of people are cycling than before. But cycling is not the only solution. There are a lot of people who are willing to take the bus or use the Dart or the Luas if they could. If they had a stop near their house, or if they could use park and ride facilities, or if they could ride a bike to their nearest bus stop and park the bike there. But these things are not there. That's the first challenge. And secondly, if they are there, we do not have enough awareness about it. So both of these needs to be done. First of all, we need to analyze our network properly to know where there is a need of public transport, and everybody should have a public transport stop within 10-15 minutes walking distance from their house to be able to go to their workplace. And in relation to that, I want to say something which is very important. So in a recent study done for all the European cities, it was found that Dublin is one of the cities where there is a very disbalanced land use. That means that most of the jobs are located around the city center, where there is a huge urban sprawl. So people travel they live far away places from their workplace, and they have to travel long distance. They have long commutes to arrive at the city center to their jobs. Okay, and this needs to change. So we really need to diversify our land use. That means like move the jobs to the outskirts or near the residential areas where we are able to, commute for 15 minutes and go to our workplaces. But there's very few people in this country actually has a commute of less than 15 minutes. And that is unlike many other European cities.
So, whose responsibility in terms of the commute to work, if we talk about businesses, that sector, is there an onus on businesses to perhaps play a part in shortening their staff's commute time?
They can do something, like they can maybe introduce shuttles, and they can introduce like car sharing or carpooling services. However, I think this is again, we need to come back to the joined up thinking. So it should start with planning permission when the companies are like establishing new premises. Where are they getting their new offices? Where are these business centers? And that is government planning board, and everybody needs to think together that, okay, if we have a new company who are in the outskirts near a residential area, let's say where Dell used to be in old times. Dell had their own office, and there were multiple like residential area around, or residential blocks around Dell offices. So people.
Is this out in Lucan?
Cherrywood.
In Cherrywood, sorry. Okay.
So people living in Cherrywood area mostly worked in Dell. Their commutes were not long, and it was far away from the city center, so it was not disrupting or increasing the load of traffic on the city center routes. So some designs like that would really improve. Diversifying land use will really improve the situation.
Okay, and in terms of the government and the issue of sustainability, it has become more of a priority. But in relation to transport and to combat carbon emissions, I know you've done a lot of research into that aspect of things. You mentioned earlier that we're quite bad in terms of how we rank in Europe and indeed the world. So where are we, and what can we do in the short term to improve that?
We are carbon emission is definitely a factor that we need to talk about, because we haven't been able to meet our GHG emission targets. At the same point of time, I think that all around the world, with the new engines coming in, the Euro 6, and then the newer classes called Euro 6B, C, D, D-Temp, these are engines which are really focused on emission and reducing emission essentially. And once we see this fleet renewal, in short-term future, we will definitely see the carbon emission going down from the conventional vehicles. Okay, but when we talk about sustainability, and I think sustainability, which is a priority for the government, we do not only talk about environment. Sustainability has 3 pillars.
Okay.
One is economy, then is environment, and then is society or people. So economy should benefit from sustainability, and people should benefit from sustainability. So we cannot come up with policies which we push down the throat of the citizens and expect that they will change their behavior to make the country environmentally sustainable. That will not happen. When we focus on 3 aspects, as I said, economy, environment, and people, their quality of life, when we focus on all 3 of them, then they work together, and once they work together, we will automatically see our carbon emissions going down.
Okay. Currently then, when you survey the landscape of things, what are we doing well?
I think our economy is doing well,
Okay.
which is a great thing. That means we can invest more in improving the infrastructure in the country. There is a lot of willingness. We are taking new steps in terms of climate change. We are thinking about how to improve transport, which is great because that means we are going in the right direction. And we are a part of EU, where we see there are lots of great policies. I mean, it's a fantastic advantage when 26 or 27 countries are working together to come up with new policies, and we can then employ these policies without, coming up with them in the first place. We can just know in what channel we can employ them. We have organizations such as ITRN, which has all the good transport research experts who has their understanding from Europe and America and Australia and all other places, which then we can implement in Ireland. So there is a lot of good things that is happening, and once we believe that we can make a change, that's also a very important thing. Apart from the intention, we must need to dream that we are going to be able to make Dublin definitely not the 14th most congested city, but probably somewhere 50th or something is good enough. Once we have the focus, we will be able to make differences. And there is a lot of willingness, as I said, so there are new research is being funded, new policies are being taken on. We will see a lot coming down the line in terms of real driving emissions. A few minutes ago I mentioned that the fleet renewal will automatically reduce the emission coming from conventional vehicles. This has been happening since 2000, but we haven't seen a huge amount of change in our emission levels, like as much as we expected. And why this happened is, you probably have heard of the word Dieselgate.
Yes.
The Volkswagen, it's not only Volkswagen, but many other companies had a defeat device which kind of showed that they're emitting much less carbon dioxide or NOx, where they were actually emitting 40 times more. Now, recently EPA funded research on real driving emissions, where we will have an instrument to measure the real emission coming from cars. And now we can easily pick, not only based on the model and make of the car, but actually just how the car is being maintained and being driven on, that how much it is polluting. And based on that, we can prosecute people and say, you're not maintaining your car well, you have taken out your particle filter. A lot of the garages would take out the particle filter, which means the environment, the pollution levels are very high then coming, like the particulate matter coming out of those cars are much higher.
Okay. And obviously the public have to play their part in this, and that may come at a cost as well. Would you be for a congestion charge in the Dublin city area?
No, definitely not. Dublin City doesn't need a congestion charge. We need to improve our public transport. If we find out that there is good accessibility and provision of public transport and still people are not using public transport, only then we can say we will charge people. But right now, if we charge people, that's just like adding an extra tax. If anybody can get on a bus and not getting on the bus, then we can charge them and tell them, okay, you are not an environmentally friendly person. But if they do not have a bus available to them, do not have a Luas or tram available to them, how can they, even if with all good intentions, do like their share?
Yeah.
So first, the onus is on the policymakers and government to provide good public transport. Then we can go into charging if we may. But the countries where they do congestion charging, like if we think about Singapore or Hong Kong and places like that, the public transport is unreal. They're one of the best in the world in terms of ranking of cities. That's the reason they can charge people, because they already have such good public transport. If you're still not using it, then it's your fault.
Yeah, and the congestion charge isn't what makes them great. It's the infrastructure.
It's the infrastructure,
What
absolutely.
about tolls? As we move further out of Dublin, we have a lot of tolls around the country. Do you agree with those?
The tolls are necessary for maintaining the roads, and the motorway network we have has really improved the access to rural Ireland, the connection between cities. So as long as we need them, we should have them. But I don't think penalizing public is the way to solve this problem. It's awareness and providing them with the right solutions in front of them, give them options. If they don't take it, then we check that first we should check why they're not taking it. You know, I totally believe that everybody wants to make the world a better place for themselves and for their kids. And we should trust people and citizens of this country for their good intentions.
Okay. Well, as we near the end of our journey, which has been fascinating and very enjoyable, I hope it has for you as well.
Yes.
Final words from you. I guess the final thing I'll ask you, and then the floor is all yours, so to speak, is you have a magic wand right now, and you can wave it, and you can change one aspect of this very complex tapestry that is the transport industry. What is it?
I would like to redesign the public transport from scratch. If I could do that, I would sit down with the network and try to find out, can I provide a bus stop, a Lewis stop, or a Dart stop, or whatever is necessary within 10 or 15 minutes walking distance of every house in this country, or the big high density areas at least. And then whatever money is necessary, I will look into that and try to justify that expenditure, because there are loads of aspects that we don't talk about in relation to transport, which is pollution, which is traffic accidents, and these are factors when we consider them in the bigger scheme. In any investment in transport should be justified.
Okay. What's your prediction for, let's say, the next 5 years in terms of the progress we'll make, or will we take a step back and will things be worse?
I think we will make a lot of progress, because there is Bus Connect going on, and there is a lot of willingness to improve. There is a lot of investment going on in different sectors of transportation. We will have problems if we ignore the joint up thinking, and if we only focus on things like electric cars and expect that the magic wand is the electric car. It is not.
Okay.
Because they're still more expensive, and the people in this country would not be, everybody is smart. They wouldn't be spending money on something that they don't know what the future is like. So, yeah, I hope, I'm very optimistic, and I hope there will be a lot of good things happening. And I hope everybody remains as optimistic as I am, so that then we can make good changes.
Well, your passion is definitely infectious. Where does it come from?
I like maths and physics. Oh, I should take this opportunity to say that we should have more women in engineering,
Yes,
and transportation and science. And women think differently in a lot of ways from men. And
do you mean more logically or
No.
analytically?
No, we can't say logically or analytically. I think we should just say that the perspective is a little bit different.
Okay.
They grow up differently. They see the world a little bit differently. They have different exposure, so they approach the problems a little bit differently for their solutions. And for that reason, I think I would like to see more women working in transportation, engineering, all aspects of science.
Okay. And do you find it, because you are so passionate about it and you're doing something that you love, do you ever find it, just the scale of all this, do you ever find it overwhelming?
No, I love it.
Okay.
I really enjoy tweaking with, equations and models and software, and then when we put them in like a real situation, try to, once I developed something for detecting accidents remotely, okay? And this is quite a complex problem, because the red light and an accident has similar effect. The cars are all stopped, the road in front of is empty, and how do you differentiate between them just using maths? You're not there on the road, so how do you know? And I came up with a logic, and that was just like a light bulb kind of situation. And I love those moments. They kind of make me feel I'm alive, and also that I can change people's lives for the better.
Well, that's quite profound, and
that is really, really important. So yeah, call me very philosophical, but
Does it make you feel smart as well?
a little
Because
bit.
if I
A
was
little
anyway
bit.
close to what you're doing, I'd be walking around calling myself a genius.
I don't feel like a genius at all, but no, being smart is good, and I think doing research in transport, we can change and also being a civil engineer, it touches all aspects of a citizen's life in any country, and that's a big kick.
Well, Bidisha, it's been a kick chatting with you today. Thanks for joining us on
Thanks,
Going
Aidan.
Places, and I wish you well with everything in the future. And hopefully, if we're doing this in the next few years, it'll be a bit more free-flowing.
Yes, hopefully.